Hello, everyone. I would like to say hello and welcome. I can't believe how prescient our theme is this year, given the reckoning that we are living through and that we are learning from and that we are growing from in our culture right now, feminist reckoning. And I'm so excited that this keynote has developed into a discussion of not only sexism in the music industry and in music culture, but activism, community, how we can move toward the future. So stories from our lives, awareness and analysis of music culture, but pointing toward the future. And I want to welcome this amazing group of panelists. You really need to cheer them all. To my immediate right is Jackie Fuchs, a Los Angeles-based entertainment attorney, writer, and activist. Also known as Jackie Fox, she was the bassist for the pioneering all-women rock band The Runaways from 1975 to 1977. After leaving the group, she worked as a records promotion executive and music publishing professional manager before returning to school to earn a BA in linguistics from UCLA and a law degree from Harvard. And she told me that she considered a PhD in linguistics, but decided that she could live anywhere she wanted if she was a lawyer as opposed to an academic. So some of you can relate to that. As an attorney, she has represented numerous well-known actors, directors, and musical artists. In 2015, Fuchs re-entered the public eye when she told the story of being raped by the late Runaways manager Kim Fowley at a party in 1975. And I have to say that I really believe that was a watershed moment that has led to the moment we have today. And her courage, and I just said that, and then I wrote a sentence about it. So please welcome Jackie.
And by the way, thank you very much for the warm weather. As an Angelino, I really, really appreciate it.
Next to her, we have Karen Gandhi, Madam Gandhi, an electronic music artist and activist based in Los Angeles. LA represents on this panel, man. She studied mathematics at Georgetown University and worked as the first ever data analyst at Interscope Records before going on to receive her MBA from Harvard. Having gained recognition as the former drummer for the artist MIA and as the viral free-bleeding runner at the 2015 London Marathon, Madam Gandhi now produces music that elevates and celebrates the female voice. In 2016, she released her fantastic first EP, Voices, and in 2017, she toured as the opening act for Ani DeFranco. Madam Gandhi is currently working on her debut full-length album and has completed 3 marathons. So. Megan Jasper is the CEO of Sub Pop Records. Let's just have some applause just for that. Oh, so they're out of order, by the way, so we'll just go out of order. She has worked at the label off and on for more than 25 years, making her way up to the top from the position of receptionist. Under her leadership, Sub Pop has evolved from grunge groundbreaker to an eclectic label whose sub-label, Hardly Art, is particularly known for nurturing women-led bands, including Taco Cat, Chastity Belt, and La Luz. Megan, and childbirth. Megan is also an athlete who has raised more than $100,000 through her charity runs. Now, Paloma McLardy, also known as Palmolive, is a legend. She founded the influential punk band The Slits in 1976. Born in Spain, galvanized by punk's explosive energy, she took up the drums and crafted an iconic style that favored passion and imagination over technical prowess. The journalist Vivian Goldman has said that The Slits created a new paradigm for being a woman. In the worlds of Palmolive, we were 4 fearless young women who came together and exploded as a cultural bomb, irritating a sensitive societal nerve. We were pretty unconscious of our potency, and yet we were certain that we did not want to conform to the roles prescribed to us as women. Advice, or I guess a life path that still is valuable to model ourselves after today, certainly. After 3 years in the Slits, Palmolive migrated to the Raincoats, with whom she recorded an album and then left the music scene altogether. Both groups were at the center of a movement that revolutionized the face of music and culture. In the past year, Palmolive's influence has been chronicled in Here to Be Heard, The Story of the Slits, a documentary by William Badgley, as well as Jen Pelly's book, The Raincoats, which is great, and you should all read it if you haven't. Following her time as a musician, Palmolive spent 16 years teaching Spanish to young children in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And this summer, she plans to start a new chapter and write a book about her experiences. And finally, we have Francisca Valenzuela, an American-born Chilean poet, singer, writer, activist, fashion designer, and entrepreneur. She has published 2 books and released 3 albums and is founder of her own label, Fantastic Records. Her eclectic, adventurous music has gone gold in Chile, and she is a Latin Grammy nominee. She is the founder of Ruidosa, an all-woman festival that has taken place in Santiago and Mexico City. Ruidosa has expanded to be a feminist arts collective doing activist work throughout Latin America and the US, including its recent investigation into gender discrimination within the 3 largest Latin music-oriented awards organizations. Welcome to Francesca. And I want to specifically thank Jen Pelly and Jessica Hopper for connecting us with Francesca and with Palmolive tonight. So I really, really value the conversation that these women, just the cultural conversation that they represent just by being here on the stage. And I really want us to just talk among ourselves. But I'll start with a sort of general question, which is, music is often regarded as a free space where, personal identity, the limitations of it can be exploded or challenged. Yet at the same time, as many of the presentations we're going to see this weekend will explore, popular music, maybe especially rock and roll and hip hop and EDM, but all popular music has often also been called out as a boys' club that's marginalized women. So I ask each of you, how have each of you found liberation in music, but also what limits have you experienced?
So much for our continuing conversation. Well, maybe, all right, I'll just start. So I came up through in the 70s, and it was a time when, there were really only, there was one all-female rock band at the time that I joined the Runaways, and that was Fanny. And I used to sit and stare at the Rock and Roll Survivor album cover and but part of the appeal was because they were totally glammed out, and it was just this fantasy. I think one of the things that's changed that is really wonderful is that women get to be real women if they want to. They don't have to dress up like drag queens, but they can if they want to. And I mean, go Beyonce. Look at, she just slayed Coachella. So I think there's one thing that's really positive now is this space to express your femininity, or your masculinity, and I'm really putting that in air quotes because I think one of the things that's nice now is that we've acknowledged there's a gender continuum, and people can fall along it anywhere and still be successful in music. And I just have to interrupt one thing and just say that today has been a great day for the Me Too movement because that fucker Bill Cosby, guilty on 3 counts. And that is really on my mind. I could not have come forward with what happened to me in the 70s, and I think that's another change. And also that I'm a little scattered all over the place, but thoughts are coming in so fast, that women don't feel that they have to be a certain way in order to come forward and say what has happened to me, what is happening to me is not fair, and my voice isn't getting heard. So I'll just leave it at that, and we'll come back to this.
Before we go on, I just wanted to say, you reminded me, I have to thank Evelyn McDonald. Are you here, Evelyn? Who's a great book about the Runaways. I want you all to read it, and she is the one who brought Jackie to the panel. So this is a collaborative panel among women, too. Women talking to each other made this panel, so.
I think with your question about
I
think with your question about freedom and self-expression in music, I think that's very important, but it's also important to say your self-expression comes at whose expense? Who does your freedom hurt and oppress? And I think each of us are on that journey. I think when you have experienced any kind of oppression, you're far more dialed into the potential harm that you might be causing others. Whereas when you haven't experienced that kind of oppression because you might be part of the norm, sort of the more mainstream culture, you're not self-aware about that. So I think the critique for me is something that you mentioned when we were backstage, which I really resonated with, which was I suppose we're not here to criticize the music that other people are making, but we are here to provide the alternative. You know, I'm not here to tell other people how to make their art, but I do want to be the one who's producing the alternative, music, and be behind the laptop. And it's like, wow, what happens if you give a woman of color Ableton? What is she gonna make? You know, what is she gonna make, and what kind of sounds are gonna come out of that? And then the other thing that you were reminding me of that I wanted to say, gosh, what was it? Well, anyway, there's plenty of opinions on the panel, so I'll pass the mic. But yeah, it's about freedom at whose expense. This is what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, like, every time I go for a run or like fitness classes or whatever, it's all this like aggressive trap music. But the truth is that like it's very effective for working out. And so then I always have this dilemma. I'm like, damn, I don't want to turn up to the sound of my own oppression. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, damn, like I can't catch a break because I do fuck with it, but then at the same time, I'm like, everything is very violent towards my gender. So I think that's the idea for me. It's about producing the alternative. So if you listen to my work, there's like, I have a feminist like trap anthem that has a dope beat, but it's like about putting your hair up in a bun and like getting work done. It's called Top Not Turn Up. So like stuff like that, where we're making the alternative is the solution to me.
Well, certainly the raincoats and the slits made an alternative, created a space of women making music together that was revolutionary. And Paloma, you were telling us a little bit about how you started to make music together, and how did you tell us about the collaborations in those bands? And
yeah, so when we started, it was very empowering. Like, I didn't even know that I could play music. I never thought of playing music, but when punk actually gave an open door, like that we could all just walk in, and everybody that wanted to do something just was able to just run with it. So there was very different outcomes. We are complex. Human beings are complex. And so I brought all those, I could be part of the Me Too. I had experiences as a child and within the punk and after and whatever, but what was given, I ran with that. The possibilities, and to write songs with the other women at the beginning, we were not competing against each other. We almost, and I don't know how we came to that point. We wanted to work together. We were excited about each other. We wanted to listen to each other. It was really like, would you call it a feminine voice? We just wanted to hear each other. And when someone will make a sound, we will hear it. And we weren't trying to copy the guys' bands. We sounded different. If I look at the drums, I never had a drum lesson in my life. So I hit the toms, and I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. I'm from Africa. And so that's how we composed. And it was like, to me, it was a beautiful thing. It was like a child's painting. You know, when I'm a teacher, so when you give a child painting, like, they go for it, and that's what we did. And when we went on a stage and we played these toms, bum, 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 and then the audience will respond to us, then we felt like, that's so cool. And so to me, it was very empowering. And then life has its ways, and there was other things, but anyway, I'll leave it for that. We'll leave it there.
Megan, you were telling a story. Can you share the story of why you decided to start working with bands or working for bands?
Yes. So growing up, I was like a little punk rock kid, and as far as like being liberated by music, punk rock was that for me, because it gave me a space and a community that I really felt like I was a part of. I understood it and I related to it in a way that I had never experienced before in school or at home or, at the weird church that my parents took us to. I mean, I never, ever felt like I was at home until I discovered punk rock. And so I had this incredible desire to, I wanted to immerse myself completely, and I needed to be a part of it. And in order to do that, and especially as a female, you needed to do something. And I am not a musician. I should never be a musician. I am much better at supporting musicians. But so for me, it was about making myself, having a job and doing something. And because I could do something, I could be a part of it, more, a greater part of it. So that meant for me, going on tour and learning how to change guitar strings, even though I didn't play guitar, and selling merch and making myself useful and learning how to read a map and all sorts of skills that are beneficial on the road. I didn't want to, I felt like the other thing I could have done was to maybe I could be a girlfriend, but honestly, I wasn't really interested in that. I was more interested in being a part of something that felt really, really important to me. I am convinced that that's why I have the job that I have now, because I wanted to be doing something. I wanted to be a part of this thing that I cherished, and I still feel that way. I feel like we all do, we get older and we do things for different reasons, but I still want to be a part of this thing, and how things are changing is incredibly exciting to me.
And you, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I love what you're saying too, because I feel like what you're saying is, in order to break into the music industry, you were like, I need to contribute. For me to have a place here, I need to contribute value. And so let me go invest in my own skill set so that then I can pull up and not be the girlfriend and have value.
Yeah, right.
And actually educate others by saying, no, I'm not here to fuck you. I'm here to dial in the mics or whatever, and that's really important. And you're being the change. And I think the other thing I was going to say too is that a lot of times we as women or those in sort of marginalized parts of society, we don't see our own personal power because there is so much self-doubt. We don't see ourselves represented, so we don't think we can do it. And so then that compounds the problem.
Yes.
But one of the best lessons that I continually try to tell myself is like, step into your own personal power, invest in your own skill set. It's never too late. Keep it moving, keep growing, because then you can pull up to a space and contribute value so that you can participate in it. And then also, hopefully, pull up the next generation with you.
Yes.
I invest in my own producer skill sets, yes, for my own music career, but the real thing that motivates me is the thought of being able to run my own studio and produce for other women. And be like, we're not gonna bro out. You don't have to worry about some sort of sexual agenda that I might have with you. I'm gonna feed you healthy food and we're gonna make a beautiful record together, and come into my space, yes. So that motivates me, and it makes me wanna invest in my own skill sets, and I love that you shared that.
I love that you're talking about power, because we are all so much powerful than we give ourselves credit for being. And when we talk about how we want things to change, we need to be that, and we need to do that, and we have the power, especially collectively. Looking at this group of people, we have so much power individually, but in a group like this, we can totally change the world by doing little things.
Well, this leads me to want to ask you, Francisca, I want to ask you about your origin story with music, but I also wanted, in relationship to what Megan was saying, I wanted to ask you about the festival, which you organized partly because you wanted to create a safer spaces for women, but also you are a woman who uses the word collaboration the way that people use the word love or chocolate. Like, you love collaboration, I can feel it. So I wanted...
Like, hey, everybody, let's collaborate.
Or
Let's
cats.
hang, let's hang. So many thoughts. First, thank you for having me. I'm so excited, guys. This is so exciting. This is such a treat. This space and this museum and this city is such a treat, I just gotta say. First, before talking about Ruidosa particularly, I do want to say something about your question, which I loved, in terms of limitations and liberation within music. And I was listening to these wonderful answers, resonate with them very much. But also, I think, in terms of a personal perspective, the limitation that I encountered was even previous to gender. To me, it was the idea of pursuing music. Was that an option really or not? Yeah. I think to speak of the opportunity and the privilege to pursue an artistic career, coming from Chile, in a family that was college educated and are academics, and I already have the privilege of having a family that values culture within a Latin American country. and I had the opportunity to study. I think the first challenge was, is this a possibility for real to pursue? And if so, how to do it? And then came the following question of knowledge, of how information is power, and how do I access that information? And Ruidosa also, jumping back and forth, the festival and the platform, which basically seeks to do cultural and social transformation through the empowerment of women in Latin America, seeks to also give information, because one of the things I was always encountering constantly was this hold of information. No, the labels know what they're doing. No, the managers know what they're doing. And they're so far away, you can't get to them, you don't know, and I think one of the biggest limitations was myself, because I was, in this journey of deciding to do it and having, the joy and the exploration and all the fun stuff that comes with music, all the challenging stuff that comes with music. There was also a notion of constant inadequacy that had to do not only with, self-esteem and pursuing artistic, challenging careers, but also because there were no women around. And it took me about 5 years to notice that there weren't any women around, and that there weren't women around in the studio or on the bus where I was touring with 14 men. And then also, we were talking backstage, in terms of when I was lucky enough to get my music, being an independent artist, out in a region, in a country, and begin to have a sustainable career, encountering the challenge of stereotypes and the challenge that I wasn't the traditional Latina, that again, all is well with all sorts of projects and models of women, but the idea was that there weren't any other ones around. And so the limitation that I encountered then, because each kind of stage was different, was to push open those doors and try to find those references and try to find a way that I can make a kind of a career, a customized career, a career that fit me from Chile to the world. And all these things were happening, and it all led to, in an interesting kind of synergy, to the opening of a space like Ruidosa. Because Ruidosa, now that I talk about it a lot, and I've been lucky enough to have, we're on the 4th year of, we just did the 3rd version, we're going on the 4th year of the festival, and also we have many different kind of programs. One is the festival itself, which we do in Mexico City and Santiago, and we do panels. We have also workshops and kind of educational stuff, and then we do information, we do studies, and we lift data. So we're saying there's this problem of the structural systemic problem about gender inequality, about behavior, about barriers of access, of numbers, of lack of representation, of participation, and we need to listen to these stories and learn about them and show that there's not only one way to be a woman or one way to be successful or be a successful creative person, and we need to see different women doing different things. But then also, we need to kind of have the hard data, and especially in countries where this conversation is precocious and it is just starting, and the word feminist closes doors, it doesn't open them. This is a cool situation, it's very rare, so it still is a scary concept, and there's femicides, and women are dying, they're being killed by men, and husbands, and boyfriends, and brothers, and stepfathers, and it seems very dense and very dark to go there immediately, but that's the fight that we're giving. Those are the rights that are in the core of this, and how do we use pop culture as a vehicle to mobilize and to activate, and as a bridge to facilitate these social transformations that are needed with something as massive and as sexy as pop music, or as an event where you talk and connect and celebrate, in this case, female voices. So yeah. That's a scattered answer, but that's the beginning to warm up.
You mentioned representation, and Jackie, you have a story about how the Runaways were packaged in an advertisement from your own label.
Oh God, our own record label, did an ad where they took photos of us and they cropped them so that all you saw was our crotches or our breasts, and then talked about how young we were. So we were literally packaged as teenage jailbait. And we had no say in it and absolutely no agency. And I think that's one of the, I think that's an important thing, is just giving women agency. And I do want to say that we're talking about our power, but we cannot do this without men. So for you men who are supportive of this movement and who stood behind it, man, power to you, because thank you so much for understanding. We were also talking about just how difficult it is. I think, institutions were created by straight white men, and so society has for a very long time reflected back just the way they perceive the world. And one of the things that I think we have to do as women is try to find a way to to tie the Me Too things that we're thinking about to the experience of men who have always been in power. So we were talking a little bit downstairs about, you know, the angry Trump voter, the worst part of his base, and what they're going through is very much what we as women have gone through for many, many years, but we aren't tying that together and saying, this is how you feel. We're trying to say, we can't say, imagine what it's like if women just came up to you all day and admired your ass, because guys would be like, that would be fantastic. So I think we really have to find a better way just to communicate what it is that we as women in the music industry or in any industry are going through, so that people who aren't us or who haven't experienced it can understand it and relate it to what they are experiencing.
I love the way that I love what you just said about, you know, men, and we're talking about cis-het men at the moment, I guess, but, you know, they would just feel fantastic if women told them how great their asses were, because that leads us to a conversation I wanted to have about sexuality and eroticism as an expression within music. And Kieran, you had said something about how the male unit of the band or whatever is focused on appealing to women, making men appeal sexually to women, and you were just talking about that structure a little bit. Can you talk about that?
The idea behind that was just that we were understanding, the question was why would even men feel threatened by the existence of a female band or a female producer? Why is that even such a threat? It's like, damn, we over here doing our own thing anyway, you know, it has nothing to do with you. But I think it's a bit of the culture of music, or maybe the reason why the guy picked up the guitar or Ableton Live or whatever in the first place was this sort of notion of like, I want to be a badass guitar player to get girls, and I want to participate in the whole culture to attract women, and because we've decided that that's power. And so then when we as women step into our own power, whether it is to play these instruments or to produce or whatever, that threatens that sort of access and that entitlement of male energy to women. And I think that's a problem, you know, that's a problem, and it's not okay. That's just, the idea was just explaining why would you feel so threatened when there's like 8 of us anyway, and we out here doing our own thing with love, you know, damn, just go back to your own oppressive area, we cool over here, damn.
Well, in relationship to that, I would take it a step further and say, there was also that, I think it was maybe Richard Hell, many people can correct me in this room, who, you know, said even the ugliest guy is attractive when he's in a band. So it's not only that men can get women, but like the man who could not get a woman can get a woman through a band, which is like one of those foundational myths of rock and roll that we're
But then there comes the double standard in terms of like, what does a female have to be successful in rock music or pop culture, and then what qualities does a man need? You know what I mean? The same way we're talking about how the threatening of the space, also in the sense of what music is real and valuable and which music is not real and valuable. You know, how if it comes from a female or a woman or a man, is that conditioning the message, the validity of that message, right, or not? Because I think especially in the rock arena, and then this is kind of the background I have in the Latin rock music, it was very hard to be believed. You know, it was like, oh, this is so sweet and so cute, like, yeah, you know what I mean? So there's this idea also of what is the true rock and roll, and I remember in an interview I gave in Mexico once, my first radio interview, I was I was there in the booth, and it was a rock show, and he goes, "You're wearing a dress. Why did they bring you here?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I was all naive. I'm like, "What do you mean? Do you don't like my dress? Like, what's going on?" And he's like, No, because this is a rock radio. But then again, mind you, there are many bands that are rock bands, and they're great and all you want, but there's not like a rock substance in terms of rebellion or defying the norms or changing the world. And I was like, so what's rock then for you? That the fact that I don't have tattoos or a leather jacket is defining more than the lyrics of the song or whatever other, you know, content I'm generating that I think has truth to it, right? Like, that I think is subversive. So it comes down to that illusion of what is rock and roll or what is valid. I'm talking about a specific, you know, kind of genre, but yeah.
No, and I think that goes to the point also that women and femmes, you know, I want to make sure that we're representing a trans inclusion in this conversation, but we are typically valued for our looks, whereas men get to be valued for their skill sets. And the reason why that's a problem is that A, is not a choice, and B, we do live in a world that's a capitalist society. So your value comes from how much of a skill set you have and how much money you make. And that's the problem. That's where we are set up to fail. And it goes to exactly your point. You're pulling up to a rock label to talk about your work. And they're asking you about your clothing. It's the classic bullshit. Right.
It's a degradation.
It is a degradation. It's disrespectful. And like, damn, we are gonna pull up with dope outfits. This is my Pisces sister. You know, we're gonna pull up with dope outfits. Yes, we are gonna look good because that's part of the culture as well. That the part of the self-expression is to keep it moving. I keep my hair color changing and keep it moving. But we're also here to make great music and do excellent work. And one thing I wanted to add too is that Francisca didn't mention, but she booked me for her Ruidosa. And I was in Chile.
I was just in Santiago about a month ago.
A month ago.
Yeah.
And so that goes to the point of Fran noticed a lack, a dearth of female musicians. Now she has the power to put others on. She saw me perform a year ago. We've been good Pisces buddies ever since. And she's like, I'm gonna use my power to fly you to Chile so that you can do your work in Santiago. And I wanted to add one more thing, which is that I'm very interested these days in only putting myself in places where I can thrive. I'm not as interested in putting myself in spaces where it's gonna be a struggle. And that's a personal choice. We need both. But you built a scenario where I could walk in and do my work to an audience who needs it. And so you built that womb to keep it going. You built that for me to come in and do my work, as opposed to walking into a male-dominated rock radio where we're already set up to fail because you're just trying to look at what we're wearing.
You know, something that's amazing about both of you and is really different from when I was coming up in the rock scene is that now just the idea of mentoring. I mean, that's something that, somebody that I used to work with at Columbia Pictures, a lawyer, just became the COO of Paramount Pictures. And he was talking about all these great, people who had mentored him as a lawyer, and they were all men. And I realized that's something that has really been missing in the entertainment industry, has been women mentoring women and men mentoring women. There's just, without the but true mentoring. I mean, that's what mentoring is, yeah. So it's not the tit for tat. It's really taking an interest in somebody and saying, I'm going to pass the torch and I'm going to make life easier for some people that I think have been excluded. So I think, kudos to both of you for doing that, because it's something that I really, really would have liked in my life coming up.
But I think we were part of that too, in a different way, not so direct, but as stepping, maybe build a brick here that you guys, like the Riot Girl group, could come on top of what we had done way back then. And the idea, the beautiful idea there is that together we can build something better, something bigger than each one of us, without that competition, instead of that striving and pushing someone down so that I can go up. It's just really recognizing the skills someone has, so just saying, you know what, I can help you in your journey. I don't even need to agree with you, We can create our own culture. I really believe you can create your own culture, no matter where you are. It doesn't have to be in the music business or anywhere.
Megan, did you experience this? I'm curious about your views of this issue of mentorship and as a label executive.
Let's see how strong I am.
Here's
right
the.
now.
That's because you were never in a band.
Yes, this is true. And saved by a woman.
Thank you.
Anytime.
The mentorship thing is really interesting to me because just last week I was asked if I had a mentor, and which I preferred to mentor, but I have many, and one of them actually is Jonathan Poneman, my boss, who has given me the authority to help shape a label that he co-founded. And we were talking about this earlier, and some of my coworkers are here, But I think some of the beauty in having that ability is creating a space that, for the most part, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a safe space, and we talk about that. We talk about the fact that our offices, our spaces, our stores, whatever Sub Pop is, it needs to always be a place that's welcoming, that's collaborative, that is open, that is in a constant state of learning and self-improvement. We are going to fuck up. We're going to say some dumb things. We need to learn from them. We need to be better. It's more important to even goof up at times and try than to not say something and not try. But I want to say also that, you know, I love that we sort of have this bubble. It's also at times a bubble, and we talk about that as well, because we are often spared from a lot of the stuff that a lot of other people endure. And I need to say one other thing, which is I have other mentors as well, and they're mentors for different reasons, but mainly Susie Tennant and Kate Becker, two incredible women from here in Seattle that I feel like I look to all the time, not because they have a certain thing, not because, you know what, it's because of who they are and because I love who they are, and they exercise their sense of self in a way that I find so incredibly empowering. Susie, with her kindness and openness, and I've never, in all of the decades I've known her, I've never heard her say a shitty thing about anybody, which we all know is a fucking miracle. And the other thing is Kate Becker, because she lifts everybody up all the time, and so I look at them as my mentors.
Can I ask the audience a question while we're talking about safe spaces? Because one of the things that I hear a lot from men is that they're afraid in creating safe spaces for women, which they very much want to do, that they can't be themselves anymore because they're afraid. Are you guys experiencing that? I know you're all just writers and you're all sitting in your rooms alone, so there's no... Because I think that's something that we do need to address culturally, is not making men feel that their voices have to be diminished in order for ours to be heard and for us to feel safe. You know, it's the snowflake thing, like now we've got to treat everybody with kid gloves and so we can't be human. And I think that's something that we have to address in order to change the institutionalized Me Too-ness.
Well, we will have lots of time for discussion, but that makes me want to ask a question actually to you, Paloma, in relationship to what you said, Jackie, which is there's a nostalgic idea of 70s punk, that it was a very equal scene and that women could just... you know, could wear punk clothes and and overcome the sexism of the 70s, which were so bad, you know, whatever. And of course, these ideas are so simplistic, and they have been, you know, disproven by a lot of the work that people in this room have done. But it wasn't ideal, maybe, to create a different environment than what classic rock represented. How did that attempt to get away from kind of the classic rock, He-Man, caveman, arena rock thing, how did that work in punk? But also, how was maybe that notion that it was truly equal, was not, you know, how was that not true?
So there was more open doors. Like we were, you know, like the Slits is a proof that there was an open door. We were invited by the Clash to go on the White Riot when we hardly had play. So we were given opportunities by our friends, you know, that were male, white males in this case. But also there was when I read it, I hear it, and I say, well, that was not exactly how it was. This is my experience. Maybe other people had experience, but I was 2 weeks, I was in a band with Sid Vicious, who was a huge icon, and people look up to him, and after we finished practicing, I'm just gonna give you a little story. So basically, like, I have my miniskirt, my fishnet tights, but that was my normal way of dressing, and he is kind of like acting all macho, and I'm like, I was like thinking about something else. I was not attracted to him, and I wanted him to just leave, and we would just, and he's like kicking the cat and acting all punk and strong. And the more he's acting like that, the more I'm put off by him. I'm like, just get out of here. So I was part of the band, but the next time we had to practice, he said, you're out. And I go, what do you mean I'm out? Like, so we were practicing in my house, so I said, you're out of here too. And then I had to say, you know what? I just want to work with girls. So I went around and I asked anybody that caught my attention, do you want to be in a band with me? And I saw Ari. Ari was throwing herself in the floor and kicking and fucking your mom, whatever, like she was just talking to her mom, and I said, she has no inhibition. So then that was one pick, and that's how it went. Tessa was from the Castrators, so we got her on the bass, and so that was the beginning. Like, it was really a conscious decision that I didn't want to deal with it, and it's not that I hated guys, but I didn't want to have to. I was trying to do something. And I knew that was going to be a problem.
I think it's interesting, and all of us do it, including myself, but I think it's interesting that the phrase, I don't hate men, it endures so much. Like, why does the idea of women wanting to create a space for themselves mean that we hate men? Right. Why does the language go to hate immediately?
Maybe propaganda?
There you go. Jackie, when you were playing in the Runaways, I want to talk about the musical experience of playing in the Runaways. And was there a sense of, like, what was the sense of collaboration? I'm not going to say was there. What was the sense while you were making the music, and how did that make you feel?
Boy, I have to think about how to even answer that. I mean, we were getting to do something that women did not do at that point in time. So there was always this sense of rebellion and occasionally a sense of sisterhood, which was really, really nice when it happened. And it really only happened when we were making music. So the actual process of creation itself was incredible, but the rest of it just sucked. I mean, I was just thinking about this. Joan Jett kind of famously said that she would never be in a band with a woman. And I think that's so sad, but I also understand it because I would think long and hard about being in a band with women. And it's not how I want to feel, it's not how I want to think, and these women here are making me change my mind about that, because you would all be incredible to be in a band with.
All right, we got a new band, right?
Yeah.
And Megan's gonna learn to play an instrument.
But so I have a fake band now with my girlfriends who in fact, two of them were people who were there the night that I was raped, and two of them are people that had negative experiences with the guy who raped me, whose name I don't say, which I suppose gives him a kind of power, but fuck him. And it's like being in a fake band is so much more fun than being in a real band, because aside from the fact that you don't have to rehearse, we just go and do things together, and we really look out for each other, and that should be an experience you can have in a real band. So I don't know, maybe I'll start playing again and do that, but maybe I'll just do all your legal work and let you guys be awesome.
It's so cool to sit next to so many legends. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is so cool. This is me and Fran are sitting next to some real legends, so thank you. When you asked earlier about men feeling safe in spaces, I'm glad you asked that question, and then you brought up this thing of hatred towards men. I think if men experience any of the kind of sexism and misogyny that women deal with on a regular basis, they also would have a little bit of hatred in their heart. They also would have that hatred in their heart. And I think being angry is okay. Think of being angry. In my work, what I try to do is I try to what I call intellectualize my emotions. Because I know that if I take that feeling of anger and respond with anger, it's ineffective. You know, my last name is Gandhi, so we have all types of peacefulness in my... I'm not related to Mahatma, but obviously, you know, I think it's all about love energy. And so what I try to do is understand how something made me feel and why it is that I feel angry about it. And then I try to intellectualize it so that A, I don't contribute to the oppression of somebody else, but B, I can explain to someone with kindness and with empathy. And many people don't agree with that strategy because it places the burden of oppression on the person who's oppressed to educate, as opposed to telling the person who's in the position of power that they need to do a little bit of work to understand why they might be contributing to the oppression of somebody else. But I think it is important for us to be brave enough to embody that empathy. And when you were asking about men feeling safe in spaces that are maybe female-dominated, or someone who's straight being in a queer space, or, you know, someone of color being in a Caucasian space, the list goes on and on. I think it's on us as leaders not to perpetuate the kinds of oppression that somebody else has given to us. It's not about now female over male. It's about saying, no, let us show you the way. Let us show you an alternative way to lead, so that when you lead again, it looks a little bit different, and you're a little bit more self-aware. Because I would never want you to experience the feeling of having your voice quieted, because I've experienced it, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I want to embody that change when I lead. So that's the first thing. Men shouldn't come into a space and now feel like you're quieted. That means that whoever is in the leadership position is just part of the problem. Now, when you were talking about men not feeling free in those spaces to like be themselves, if being yourself is an oppressive energy, we're not interested in having you in our space. We're just not interested.
Except I'm talking about the kind of thing where men are like, what, I can't tell a woman that she looks nice now? And the answer is, yeah, you can tell me I look nice if you've told me what a great job I just did on that project.
Amen.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like when it's not the thing that you see, but it's my friend, and because everybody wants to look nice. I mean,
Yes.
that's the thing we were talking
Yes.
about downstairs, is that we do want people to think we're hot.
Hell yeah. Hell
And
yeah.
we're fashionable,
Yes.
and we're fabulous.
Yes.
But everybody wants that. We just don't want that to be the only thing
Exactly.
that they see, or the first thing that they see, or if it's the first thing that they see, at least that they kind of cop to that's the first thing that I see. But now, wow, you're an amazing person.
Yes.
You're a fantastic lawyer. You're a good friend. You're a great listener, whatever that is.
And you're so hot. Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that you brought that up. Sorry. I love that you brought that up, and that's also what we talked about downstairs, is like, so sometimes I think that women, when we're in spaces, in order to completely avoid being considered that we're the girlfriend, or that we're there to flirt, or whatever it is, I think that's also unfair to us as women, because then we have to actively not enjoy our own sexuality. Because if we do step into that, then immediately our role in that space has been degraded, to your point earlier.
Degraded, and then also there's an actual risk at hand.
Yes.
For example, the opportunity, if it's in a work environment or opportunity that's work-related, there's the risk of you losing the opportunity that's at hand. I think that's also, there's a punishment, you
Totally.
see? Like if there is a hierarchy in we were talking about this downstairs, if there's a hierarchy in this interaction or dynamic,
Yes.
you're like, the desirability is an important role in females that are in the entertainment business per se, let's say, or in music, in the pop world, for what I've experienced. And if I come with my partner, or if I come, you know, unattractive, or being like, no, there's limits, I don't want to go out to dinner after, you know, this concert, this meeting, it's like, she's a drag, you know what I mean? Like, maybe let's not invite her. Maybe I'm not going to book her for this festival or something. I mean, or musicians don't want to collaborate the same way, or, you know what I mean? You're not, like, the desirability is an important factor in keeping the project or your persona attractive or active.
Totally. And I think
Can you tell the Gloria Estefan story?
The Gloria Estefan story. No, it's just, I mean, it's, everyone has such just moving anecdotes, but it's great to share, because I was going to say, Kieran, Madame, was saying such a great thing, which I fully agree with, which is the fact of communicating to the other person from an empathetic place. And I do think that, I just wanted to say that in the Ruidosa experiences we've had, for example, we have panels, and in these panels, we have audiences of like 500, 600 people. And the first time we had it, my bandmates even other musicians that are females were like, why are you gonna get together? You're just all gonna get together to complain and to talk shit about people and to be like, man, you know? And they came and they changed their minds because it was the first time they were exposed to new realities or new questions that maybe they hadn't thought of before. Many men and many guy friends included. And even, for example, we had Jessica Hopper come to Ruidosa last year, and she gave an amazing talk, and it was this great activity. And many friends of mine who are journalists in music admire her professionally. And they were kind of put off in the beginning that she was gonna speak from a place of also kind of sorority and gender and female empowerment. And for them, they were things that they hadn't thought about before. But since the person that was talking about it was someone that they respected so much, they were like, so she must be right. She must speak a truth. You know, it's not an invention, it's real. So there is something very radical about empathy and about listening to stories from other people, and hopefully in this case I'm very adamant that we all have blind spots and we all live in our own skin and we only know what we know and what we've lived. So there is an opportunity there to really connect. But anyway, back to the Gloria Estefan story. No, the story was just when I was starting out in Chile at some point years ago, I got an email from someone from Gloria Estefan's crew, and I thought it was like a fake mail in the beginning because I was dying. I was like, Gloria Estefan. I was telling these ladies in the back, like my mom was like, Gloria Estefan, oh my God. Like we grew up listening to Gloria Estefan. And he's like, we're gonna do a show at the stadium in Santiago, please come. We're a fan of your music. We love this song, all this information. Come to the rehearsal, and I would love for you to meet everyone. I was like, great, amazing, oh my God, yeah. So I'm, of course, 15 minutes early, and they're like with my backpack, like, I'm ready to go, Gloria, where are you? And we get there, and I'm at the rehearsal, get to meet everyone, and then he comes out, and he's like, okay, so we're gonna go, so we're all gonna go have dinner. I'm like, great, we're gonna go with the crew. What's going on? He's like, no, just you and I. And I was like, what now? Also, he's much older than I am and I was. And I was like, oh, so if it's gonna be the two of us, we're going to this great place. I know, let me invite my boyfriend. And he's like, you have a boyfriend? Oh, no, just it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just see yourself out in the stadium. And I was like, I was absolutely horrified. And I think at the time, and here again, I'm speaking to you now at a different point in my career, and then Ruidosa also gave me these tools because I think the amount of stuff that, even though within the spectrum of things, they're not, the most violent, they were things that I didn't know that they were violent, even so, and they were things where I didn't know how to behave, and when they would happen, even if it was like in a meeting with a label, that they would fake propose to me at the meeting because I was gonna sign with them. I didn't in the end, good for me. But they were like, welcome to the family, mwah, 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 kissing my hand and doing these things that are, of course, kind of just attitudes and behaviors that seem silly. But at the time, if you're alone in a table with 3 guys that are gonna give you a contract with the money to make your album and they behave that way, you're like, so maybe I'm the problem. I'm not the cool one that knows how to behave in these situations. And the same with this other man. I was like, oh my God, so does this mean I shouldn't tell him I have a boyfriend? Should I lie? Like why is it convenient to me to be single or to lie about being with a partner so I will get to meet and have dinner with Gloria Estefan? You know what I mean? Like, so it was constantly kind of submitted to those things, which at the time, again, looking back, I didn't even think about it twice. And in the interviews or other experiences I had with musicians or producers, it was just like, fortunately for me, I had mentors or friends or partners or family members that taught me and showed me otherwise. So I was like, this doesn't feel cool, I'm not gonna just go, it's fine, whatever. There are other options. But I'm in a situation where I know that I'm lucky because I have a community and family and mentors and friends and bandmates that do lift me up and did protect me and did teach me many things and did validate me as an artist and an individual anyway, Yes.
I want to jump in really quick on that. When you were speaking, I was thinking too, I was like, men shouldn't be giving opportunities to women because they're attracted to them, and that can be part of it, but then you have an expectation built in, and so then that puts that person in a really awkward situation where you're so upset because you actually would have loved that opportunity, but now it comes with some sort of weird expectation. And moreover, if you're in a position of power, don't think that by bringing in women, bringing in folks of varying gender identities, bringing in folks of color, is you doing them the favor. if you live in an all-white space and you don't have, if you work in an all-white environment, you don't have folks of color, sounds like a pretty boring fucking place to work. Yeah. If you don't have female energy in your space, it sounds like a pretty aggressive place to work. So it's not about you doing us a favor. You would be so lucky to have what we bring in, and you would be so smart as to create an environment as a leader where each person you bring in can thrive to be their best self, such that the entirety of the company or the band or the group thrives. So that's really the nuance. It's not a diversity check mark. It's you would be so lucky, because if you don't take care of us, we will go elsewhere and we will do fantastic shit such that you wish you could be part of what we're doing.
Well, it's also that you miss the point of view of half the population.
Exactly.
That's going to help you grow your business or keep customers or get, I'm just like, how amazing is it that Black Panther has broken all the box office records, and Hollywood is just kind of going, oh, we didn't know that white people would want to see black people. It's like, it's just sometimes I'm embarrassed to be in Hollywood.
Well, you did pursue law and entertainment law after your experience, after you have said to me, my response to being raped was to become a lawyer, to empower myself. Can you talk about giving yourself those tools?
Yeah, but it wasn't just to empower myself, it was to empower other people, to fight for other people, because it is one thing that I learned, it's a lot easier to stand up for someone else than to stand up for yourself. And that is something that I hope will change in every industry going forward. And I hope that if the Me Too movement accomplishes one thing, it's that. I mean, you can probably hear I'm kind of soft-spoken. I'm really quite introverted. I find it hard to speak up for myself, but when I'm fighting for somebody else, I am fierce. And I am one of the best lawyers that I know, because it's just easy to go to bat for other people. But yeah, it is part of that knowledge is power thing. I was wrong about it protecting me from this stuff. I kind of thought, well, okay, I'm just this, cute little rock musician. I'm going to be a target. I will go behind the scenes, and I will go get this fancy law degree from the best school in the country, and then no one will harass me or hit on me or bother me. And it's like, yeah, they will. You'll just get people that are smarter about how to go about it. And so I would say that the experience was in some ways worse, because at least as an artist, that you had to get accorded some respect because you were the artist. When you're a lawyer, you're just fungible. There are Harvard Law School cranks out almost 600 lawyers every year. It's like, okay, fine, next. But at least in the 70s, there weren't a lot of female musicians, so I wish I had realized how much power I really did have.
Amen to that. Megan, Sub Pop has always been a label, and I think Seattle rock has always been a scene that's been known for feminism, for musicians male musicians also embracing causes like Rock for Choice and feminist causes. At the same time, in some ways, it is a very male, or was historically a very male environment, although not always, of course. There were always great women-led bands on Sub Pop too. Yeah. But I'm just curious if you can talk about that side of Seattle rock historically, the very male side of it, and how that dynamic worked in terms of feminism and gender politics as well.
What's funny is I don't know. I mean, I don't know I'm not sure if it's because I've been here for so long and I've been so close to it, or if it's because I have totally kept my head down and just constantly just tried to follow my path and not allow for obstacles to keep me from following my path. I rarely ever thought about stuff like this, to be brutally honest with you, because I've always lived in such a determined space. What I will say is that how things feel right now is so different from how things felt almost 30 years ago when I moved here. I would say, even though weirdly feel like I can't totally speak to all of like the dynamics and politics around it 30 years ago, I always was acutely aware of my place in things. And maybe it's because I'm older now, I don't think as much like that, but I think also things have changed enough in a way that speaks more to my own place of comfort as far as living in a very progressive city. Within the music community and outside of the music community. And then at Sub Pop, I will say we used to not talk about how many women we had on the label or even working at the label. It's something that we felt, but honestly, without really thinking about the breakdown in our office, it's pretty much 50-50. And we have a lot of incredible women represented. And the cool thing that I feel like I have seen, especially with the female musicians, is that there are times when, we always sit with them and say, how do you want us to present you in the world? What we want to follow your lead on this. And there are some women who they identify very strongly as being female, and they want that as part of the conversation and story. There are other women like Slater-Kinney, like L7, who say, we don't want that. We want to be referred to as musicians. And so it's important for us. Frank knows this well because he has to run with it often, and he's on the front lines with it. But we follow the lead, and we follow what the artists prefer as far as that goes. And even with, I will say, the women who want to be referred to as musicians and not necessarily women, like Slater-Kinney, it is pretty amazing still when we read reviews how different the reviews are for them than they are for a lot of the male musicians. And it's not quite as brutal as it was. Like, Jackie, some of your stories downstairs are so, like, the reviews were horrible because it's just like, it starts out from such a severe place of degradation. But tucked in to, how much Slater-Kinney tore it apart at a show, there will be a mention of how awesome Corin was, and let's not forget she had a baby fairly recently, or how great she looked. And yes, she looks awesome all the time, and yes, she's had children, but you never read about the Mudhoney and their dad bods, like that doesn't happen. So that.
Just so that we're not all, this is what we discussed downstairs. The review that she's referring to was a review of our second album, In Cream, which started with the sentence, "These bitches suck." And then and that was the kindest thing in it. It went on, it said something like, despite what the West Coast blowjob coordinator at the label might say, they're not good, they're not so bad, they're good, they're not anything. I cannot think of an artist that would get a review like that today, that anybody would think it was okay. So, progress. But yeah, someday it'll be nice when we don't have to acknowledge that we're an all-female panel, or that we're looking at gender and race when we make hiring decisions or decisions about what to consume in terms of art and when we have voices. But so I'm hopeful. I could not have imagined that we would be where we are today back when I was making music in the 70s. This is amazing to me, and I'm still doubtful we're ever going to get a female president, but hey, I've got a few more years in me, so I am hopeful. You know,
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, the fact that we can even talk about that as a possibility is just a huge change in my lifetime. It wouldn't have been discussed when I was making music, and hopefully the next time a really strong, competent female candidate is going to run, it's not going to be the pantsuits. It's going to be who the fuck cares what she's wearing.
Yes.
Sorry, I find it very hard to separate politics from entertainment because they're increasingly the same thing.
So I want to talk a little bit about rough trade. When Jen Pelly wrote about rough trade, I experienced it from being there and talking to them, but it just made me think, first of all, how successful they were, that they couldn't contain their success. They had some lack of some of the skills, but the fact that they wanted, like they were open and treated women differently from the start. That was Jeff Travis' idea. And he was very people could come, could listen to the records however long they wanted. They had a different culture there. They created their own culture. And that had success. And I think sometimes when people, they feel threatened or something, it's because they think they're gonna lose something. I believe love is something that when you give it, you have more. When, if I give you my iPhone, I don't have my iPhone. But if I give you my love and you give it to her and we give it, it's something that generates more. So we're richer, we're better. Don't be afraid. You have nothing to lose, really. And so to me, in the steps that they did, how when I listened to the whole story afterwards, I think, wow, they really messed up in some areas, but they did an amazing thing. They fought the establishment. We were fighting the establishment from our point, the establishment of creepy managers. We did fight some battles, but they fought a huge battle and they won it. They really, so anyway, I thought that was, related to what you were saying.
What I'm hearing from what you're saying about Rough Trade as an amazing label, what I'm hearing from this conversation is there is a need to create different systems. My question is there any hope for the conventional music industry, or is that even something we should even worry about in terms of the kind of reckoning and change that we're looking for today? Do we need to create separate spaces, independent spaces, complementary, what do you think?
I think that social media is allowing for the change to happen because at the very least we can control our own narrative and how we're represented. So I think that's pretty major. I think in this sort of fourth wave of feminism that we're in, social media is a huge part of it. And last year we had the biggest march in the history of the planet, which was the Women's March, because we mapped everyone from the online world into the offline world to go and march. And with social media especially, whether you're signed or not, artists are communicating directly with their fans and representing themselves how they want to be represented, instead of having a label come through and be like, if you want to sell records, honey, let me tell you, you got to put some, pussy on the I actually worked at Interscope, and I remember being in a meeting at 22. I was 22 years old, I was just starting at Interscope, and they were like, yeah, I think it's just a TNA video. I'm like, what's a TNA video? Tits and ass video.
What year was this?
I'm 29. 7 years ago. It was a TNA video. So that's dark. That's really dark. Don't reduce our existence to our anatomy. We have an excellent anatomy, but we also have so much more. So I think social media for me is one of the biggest ways that we are improving the music industry, because consumers, to our point earlier, the theme of this conversation, have access to maybe the mainstream, but they have also the choice to have access to other artists who are doing alternative things.
I do think, though, I think both things are important. I mean, I think on the one hand, for example, I wanted to also say something in regard to what Jackie was saying earlier, is that, for example, in Ruidosa, when we had started the festival and began growing, and it's an all-female festival. Everyone is invited to participate, but everyone who holds a microphone is female or female identified. And it felt very radical, and everyone in the beginning was like, "Oh well, can men go? Were you like, are you going to be whipping us somewhere? You know, like, there was this resistance to having an all-female thing." And I'm always saying the goal isn't to have a bigger Ruidosa. I hope Ruidosa can finish soon. It's a finite project. The point is that I hope that we notice when there's festivals that don't have females. We did a study in Ruidosa about the last 2 years of Latin American festivals, and female bands or projects that include one female in whatever role on stage is only 11% on the cartel, right? And so the objective is to see the lack of omission and the invisibility of females if they're not there, whether on a panel or a festival. And I think one thing that making these spaces, these alternative spaces, and being forceful with them is important, because people that are in power and hold opportunities have to listen to them or begin to kind of like brush up against them, so they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed." You know, for example, I was in a panel with festival promoters. So you have to think I'm kind of from the artist side and now have this festival, so I'm always in this dual role. It's kind of weird. And we were on the panel, and this is a big promoter I worked with in Mexico, and he's like, "When you guys released this study, we saw that our festival had the lowest participation of female, one of the lowest in Mexico." And he's like, and I was so embarrassed. I'm like, "This is so bad for business." And I was like, "That's a great response. You go get your business." You know what I mean? You up that number, you know what I mean? And now they're aware. And it was great to have a promoter of that caliber say that to me. So I think on the one hand, it's really important to have these spaces, and also treat those spaces with the professionalism and the commercial appeal that the massive spaces have, because that way they're heard and validated in the same way that maybe. Because if not, it's like, "Oh, look at that festival. It's like a little grassroots festival. My artist doesn't have to be there." But but this is why I think the pop culture idea is so seductive, because it's like, I say it's like the seductive kind of wrapping to a festival that has a message or a gist, you know, something that you want to give of substance. But then on the other hand, I do think that the transformation, it's always slower on the bigger scale, but I do think I am concerned in terms of the bigger industry, and I'm concerned because the conversation is always in the bourgeoisie and the kind of same thing. I'm saying this from the outside of the United States. The access to opportunity and to resources and to actual progress is so far away, and it's in the hands of so few, that I'm very radical to say that I am afraid that it won't change fast enough, or I am afraid that it will perpetuate the same models. And so I'm excited when I see spaces, especially coming, this is going to sound very como against the colonización, ¿sí? Where it's not from the United States or the northern hemisphere to the south, but from the south to the north, you see? Because the conversation that we have to have is also about intersection with class and with ethnicity and with geography and with, capitalism and class, and there's a whole conversation to be had there. And I think entertainment is such a potent tool and vehicle that I hope that I get very excited when I see, the Kendrick Lamars, or I think of in Latin America, Calle 13, or if you look at our heritage of folk singers, where they use these platforms and they're successful, but then they also use music as a tool of change, and they also create dialogue and conversation, and they become commercially successful. So it's like the dream, because then you're like with the label, and you're like, you can't say anything because I am selling the records you want, right? So I think it's both things. I think it's up to us and all of us, and this is a privileged, great group of people, to nurture both spaces in whatever position you're in, from whatever role you're playing.
We are going to open the floor to questions in a moment, but this panel did have the hashtag #MeToo in its title, and I do want to talk directly about sexual assault. And I guess I'd like to ask you, Jackie, how did you come to the decision to come forward, and what have been the effects since then? How have you seen the effects?
Well, part of what inspired me was I think at the time that I came forward, there was a certain number of Cosby. I'm going to use the word victims. I know it's not a popular word, but That's what we are in the time that in which we get attacked. We have been victimized. And there were over a dozen of them at the time, and people were still saying that they didn't believe them. And they were saying, well, it's a he said, she said. And there's another reason that I think people don't come forward, which is drugs and alcohol. And I'm not just talking about the drug and alcohol use that impair the judgment of men and sometimes make them unable to read a situation, because that does happen. But most of the time, it's serious predators. And the problem is that they can prey on women who are drunk, who are stoned, who are otherwise vulnerable. And in my case, I was drugged, but it shouldn't matter. If someone gets wasted intentionally, that's not an invitation to sexual assault or groping. And but because of the judgments that get put out, a lot of people don't come forward. And so to answer your question, I had two things that other women who had been brave enough to come forward didn't have. I had witnesses, and I wasn't a party girl, because I didn't do drugs and I almost never drank. And in fact, the two of my friends that are in my fake band with me, who were there that night, said they were really surprised, because when they got to this hotel where this after party was, they saw that I was really wasted, and they had never once seen me fucked up, ever. And they weren't savvy enough to know that something was potentially wrong, because it was the first gig we had ever played. But I thought, mistakenly as it turned out, that if I had half a dozen witnesses willing to go on the record and to say, this was not a party girl, that people were going to believe me, and that by believing me, they would believe some of the other people coming forward. And it turns out that we very much, we were talking about this downstairs, sorry, but about how, you're talking about, can I say this? About how hard it was for your father to deal with the Cosby thing, because it's very hard to say this beloved comedian who entertained us for so long is and I'm an asshole, is worse than that. And it's very difficult. And that's the other thing. The guy who raped me was disgusting. I thought they're going to look at all of this and they're going to say, oh, hey, yes, she's telling the truth. And people still said, well, he doesn't have a chance to defend himself, and why did she wait so long to come forward? And I mean, it is in our psychology to want to not believe these things about people that we love or that we know, or even out of fear that we could be falsely accused. And the only way to get past that is to really understand our psychology a little bit better, and it's something that I think we will always be struggling against, because our psychology wants to lead us in the other direction. So, it's a fight. I will tell you how it affected me. I was happier before I came forward. So I am still processing this. I'll probably start crying right now. I'm discovering triggers I never knew I had. At the same time, Bill Cosby got convicted today. And
I think
that's
we
a
really need
victory.
to thank you. We need to thank you so much. And
Sorry,
I'm so appreciative
this
of you
hits
being
me by
here.
surprise every time I have this reaction. It's not. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to bring this room down.
No, it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And this reaction is crucial, too.
Because it's sincere. It's sincere.
I know, man. I'll just tell you, I want to stop having it. But, okay, I'm just gonna, thank you, thank you. And yes, that is something that men can always do for women, is hand them a Kleenex. Women can do that too.
Paloma, I wanted to ask you about the song Off Duty Trip. And
Wait a minute, this isn't Kleenex, this is like a napkin. I have been misled.
good intentions, though, Anthony.
Thank you, anyway.
The Raincoats address sexual assault in your music. Can you talk about the reaction to that at the time, but also like the decision to address the issue of sexual violence openly in your music?
So it was a conscious, like the slits didn't want to be labeled feminist, the raincoats did. And that was Jackie's. So it was a conscious thing, but I think it was at the beginning, and it wasn't like the tone of all of the songs that we were writing, but yeah, it was there. I don't.
Were people shocked? Were people shocked that you were addressing this subject?
No. It was understood there was something happening, and there was something that had to be talked about. So I'm not sure if I don't feel I'm contributing too much.
No,
Maybe ask Jen. I feel like, it was something, I mean, we will talk about whatever it was in our mind, and that was Vicky was the one that wrote it. Someone wrote it, and she put the music, and so she was very, impacted by something that she had seen, and so she wrote that. And so everything experience that we felt strongly we will write about, and that was one of them.
I wanted to add to this discussion as well. There was 3 specific thoughts that I had. The first is when you were speaking about intoxication and drinking, and how then we're able as a society to sort of say, oh, well, we don't know what really happened because they were drunk. But if someone runs a red light when they've been drinking, or if they have crashed a car, or if there's a DUI, they'll be like, ooh, I didn't know that tree was there, I was drunk, my bad. It's like we're more than fine to convict them. So we have to have that same kind of accountability, and it's by having more women in the legal system, so that kind of mentality is even there. The second thing I wanted to say about this Bill Cosby situation, my father had emailed my brother, sister, and I, being like, I'm glad to see this happen, but I am sad because, that was my favorite show, and blah, blah, blah. And my sister wrote the reactionary email, so I didn't have to, and I could be the peaceful Pisces that I am, and process what's making me angry, and then think about how I wanted to respond. And I think it's about entertainment at whose expense, So if you're a consumer of this product, and the thing that person has done was not an evil directly to you, it's a little bit easier to kind of ignore their bad and say, well, I love their work. And so I try to make sure that I'm not hypocritical. So if there's a clothing brand that I'm buying from, and I'm like, well, that sweatshop labor doesn't directly affect me, so I don't mind to buy it, or I just want to look the other way because I love this brand or this fabric. That's where we have to be self-aware and say, no, my oppression is your oppression, my suffering is your suffering. When I win, you win. We have to be there strong for those who don't have that kind of protection. That was the second thing I wanted to say. And then the third thing I wanted to say was about when you were speaking about writing the music and writing sexual assault, themes into the music. That's why we must have more women in music, because if we don't control the narrative, somebody else will, and they'll get it wrong. And I'm interested in us talking not only about our assault experiences and our negative experiences, but our sex positivity, our joyfulness. Where is the positive female sexuality represented in the media? Damn, everything is so taboo. Can't talk about masturbation, can't talk about periods, can't talk about our anatomy. It's like, this is our anatomy. We like to enjoy our own pleasure. We like to enjoy our own sexuality. And there needs to be more multifaceted constructions of female sexuality and all of its plethora, all of its range, that is by us, for us.
What is the relationship between desirability and desire in music? I ask.
I don't even know what that means. What do you mean?
Well, because I think there's historically a lot of expression of desire by women. There's also a lot of packaging of women as desirable, which at times has even meant that the desire being expressed by women in music has gotten lost.
Okay, I actually have a good answer. Okay, so I saw Miranda July speak a couple of months ago. I'm somewhat familiar with Miranda July's work. So she does this cool exercise where you have to give a compliment to somebody else that you actually wish yourself you would receive. So you have to give a compliment. So if I wanted someone to tell me that they like my outfit, I would be giving that compliment to somebody. So she was like, so then Miranda said, when it came to my turn, the compliment that I gave to somebody else was, you're so fuckable. Like, she was like, I wish someone would come to me and say that. She's like, because no one ever says that. She's like, no one ever says that. I wish people would say that to me. And I just thought that was so funny, because you're right. We do want to be desirable, but because maybe her work is in feminism, people can't say that. And I think for me personally, in the spirit of being vulnerable on the panel, when she said that, I really related. I was like, that's hilarious. I love that. Because fuckability is such a construct, I think. But more recently, I've been thinking about how do we each dial into the thing that makes us shine, and what is it that makes us appealing or attractive, and it's multifaceted. It's not just looks and our anatomy. And maybe it's the way, in my case, when I'm performing music, when I'm playing the drums, when I'm speaking. I love when people say, your mind is so sexy. The way you play the drums is so beautiful to watch. So it's about all of us feeling that we even have examples of stepping into what it is that makes us desirable beyond a more Hollywood construct of TNA. Yeah.
All right, well, looks like we have had a great conversation here tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out.